Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a fantastic set of handwritten notes all about geography's resources and development. Think of this as us taking these awesome notes and turning them into a super clear visual guide for you.
So here's the plan. We're going to start with the basics, right? Like, what even is a resource? From there, we'll get into all the different ways they're classified, check out a huge global moment for the environment, and then we'll zoom in to see how all of this applies to India.
All right, first things first. Let's really nail down what we mean by a resource, or as you'll see in the notes, sansadhan. You know, it's a word we use all the time, but in geography, it has a really specific meaning.
And here it is. The key thing to remember is that for something to be called a resource, it's got to pass a three-part test. 1, we need the tech to actually get to it. 2, it has to make economic sense to use it. And 3, it has to be culturally okay to do so. If it fails on any one of those, it's just stuff in the environment, not a resource.
This little diagram from the notes, it sums it all up perfectly. You see how humans are right there in the middle? That's because we interact with nature, the physical environment, using our technology. And all of that happens within the framework of our institutions, like our government or our economy. It's this constant, moving relationship.
Okay, so we know what a resource is. Now, how do we start sorting them all out? Well, these notes break it down for us into a few key ways of classifying them.
The first way to categorize them is pretty simple. It's all about where they come from. What's their origin?
So this gives us two big buckets. First, you've got biotic resources, or JVIC, which is basically anything living, plants, animals, us. Then you have abiotic resources, ajaivic, which is all the non-living stuff, like rocks, minerals, and metals. Simple, right?
Our next category is all about how long they'll last. Basically, can we keep using it, or is it eventually going to run out?
This gives us renewable resources, or navikaraniya. Think solar, wind, things that can be replenished. And on the flip side, we have non-renewable resources, anavikaraniya. These are things like fossil fuels that took millions and millions of years to form. So once they're gone, they are pretty much gone for good.
All right, our third way of looking at this is all about a simple question. Who owns it?
So you can have individual resources, stuff that's privately owned by a person or a family, like your house or a piece of land. And then there are community resources, things that are open to everyone in a community, like a public park or a picnic spot.
Then if we zoom out, we get to national resources. This is basically everything inside a country's borders, and even out into the ocean for about 12 nautical miles. But once you go way out, beyond 200 nautical miles, you're in the open ocean. That's where we find international resources. And those are managed by global organizations, not just one country.
And that brings us to our final way of classifying these, the status of their development. In other words, are we actually using it right now, or is it still on the to-do list?
So first, you've got potential resources. We know they're there. A great example is the incredible potential for wind and solar energy out in Western India, but we just haven't fully tapped into them yet. That's different from developed resources, which are ones we've already studied, measured, and are actively using.
Now this next bit is super interesting. Stock refers to stuff we know could be useful, but we just don't have the technology to access it yet. Think about using the hydrogen and water for energy. But reserves are different. They're part of that stock that we do know how to use with the tech we have now, but we've deliberately set them aside for the future. It's like we have the key, but we're choosing to keep the door locked for now.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We're going to move from all this classification to a really important moment in history, the very first Earth Summit, also known as Prithvi Sammelan.
So, picture this. It's 1992, and leaders from more than 100 countries all meet in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This was a huge deal. They were there to tackle some of the biggest problems facing the planet: environmental protection, climate change, and development. And one of the biggest things to come out of it was a plan called Agenda 21.
And the idea behind Agenda 21 was pretty revolutionary. It was this big global plan to fight things like environmental damage, poverty, and disease through cooperation. But here's the really cool part. It said that every local government should create its own local Agenda 21. The idea was global goals, but local action.
All right, let's bring it all back home now and take a look at resource conservation specifically in India, covering both the philosophy behind it and some of the hard facts.
You really can't talk about conservation in India without this famous quote from Mahatma Gandhi. It just perfectly captures the core challenge, doesn't it? It's all about balancing everyone's genuine needs against the dangers of unchecked greed.
And this chart gives us a picture of the land itself. You can see that a big chunk, 43%, is plains, which is vital for farming and where most people live. Then you've got 30% mountains, which are the source of our major rivers. And finally, 27% is plateaus, which are full of minerals. Each area has its own special resources and its own challenges.
And just to give you a sense of scale, India is a massive 3.28 million square kilometers. But here's a fun fact. We only have detailed land use data for about 93% of that area. And a really important national goal, one that was set all the way back in 1952, is to have 33% of the country covered in forest. That's a target we're still striving for.
So for our final section, let's dig into one of the biggest challenges there is when it comes to resource management: land degradation. What's causing it, and where is it worst?
This table from the notes is just fantastic because it makes things so clear. It shows you the cause and the effect. You see that mining and deforestation are huge issues in states like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. Meanwhile, overgrazing is the main problem in places like Gujarat and Rajasthan. And then you have over-irrigation causing trouble in Punjab and Haryana. And that really leads us to the big final question. If the causes of the problem are so different from place to place, how can we possibly have a single solution? It really drives home the point that a one-size-fits-all approach is never going to work.